Good evening, everybody. This is Ellie on Point. And of course, this is with my beloved and very first GHK teacher, Andi Locke. She was my first teacher when I first discovered GHK, then called GNM, German New Medicine, in 2021. And Andi was the only one who had a course that really suited what I was looking for. And in 2022, I went on that course, and that set me off in my my GHK journey, which is near and dear to my heart. It's everything to me. And so I'd like to present Andi Locke, GHK educator. She's a phenom. Hi, Andi.
Hi, Ellie. It is so wonderful to be here and to be with your students and audience. It's truly an honor. I am blessed.
Thank you so much. I'm really quite honored to have her here again tonight. Yes. So incidentally, Andi is also on my podcast. We had a recording 2 years ago, so this is kind of like podcast number 2. So,
Yeah, that's perfect.
Andi, would you just give us like a quick elevator speech about GHK GNM, what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, I always say there's no elevator speech for this. And
True.
that's only because we have no concept for understanding an entirely different paradigm, because that's what it is. It's a new understanding of biology, physiology, pathology, psychology, psychiatry, and behavioral issues, which basically is kind of like everything. So it's the work of Dr. Hammer, who discovered this out of tragedy and discovered that what we think we know about the body is not accurate. And he discovered 5 biological laws over time that are verifiable in CT scans that explain to us what is the cause of all disease. He figured that out. That's the first biological law, that all disease starts with a biological conflict shock. That is not stress. That is not emotional trauma. It is biology. And from there, the second biological law, that all diseases are in 2 phases. And that's really important to understand. Third biological law is that, it ties in embryology, which was discovered 200 years ago. So it ties it into a very established science on how we develop as an embryo and the different germ layers that we have and how we are constructed from the inside out from the time we are, 1 day old. And then the fourth biological law is all about the microbes that we have in our body. They're not what we think they are. They are absolutely wonderful. We want microbes. We need them. They're important for our survival. We couldn't be alive without them. And then the last biological law is just that this is all made on purpose, that this is part of nature, and that all of nature helps us to survive.
Amazing. The best elevator, non-elevator speech about the
Right.
5.
Elevator, non-elevator. Yeah.
Amazing. I love that. It's so succinct, but you could understand everything in a very simple way. Yeah. So, Andi, we wanted to get Andi here today because she works with something called Psychoses and Constellations. And in medical speak, it would simply be labeled as mental illness. But of course, if we know the 5th biological law of nature, we don't call it illness. We call it a sensible biological special program. But there is something about Psychoses and Constellations that makes it quite special, but also very complex. And so, Andi is the best person to simplify it for us. So, Andi, take it away, please. What are psychoses and constellations?
It's a fabulous question. And man, oh man, yeah, it is fascinating when we learn. First of all, it's fascinating when we learn that our illnesses are not what we think what they are. And then when we look at the other work that Dr. Hammer did, so after he mapped out the entire brain and he discovered what the biological conflict shock is for every single disease out there, he turned his attention towards what about mental illness? His first job out of med school was working in a psych place where people were treated very inhumanely, and he was horrified at what these folks went through. So he turned his attention to them and said, maybe they're bipolar, they're schizophrenia, all their mental illness, maybe that's biological too. And of course, being Dr. Hammer, he took CT scans, their CT scans, and he looked at them and he realized, oh my gosh, yes, all of what we'd call mental illness and behavioral issues and mood disorders like depression, they are all biological as well. They follow the 5 biological laws. This was unheard of. And this is what turns everything upside down when we understand this. So the basis of what he discovered when we get to psychoses is that to understand we're going along in our normal day, and then we have a biological conflict shock, and that impacts as a lesion in the brain that turns on a program somewhere in our body. Cell growth, cell loss, functional loss. At the same time, we are conflict active. So if you just lost your job, you're going to be focused on, oh my gosh, I have to find another job. And you're conflict active. So you're running from a saber-toothed tiger at that point. You're on, right? You're conflict active. Your hands and feet are a little bit cold. Now, let's say you're trying to find that job because without that, survival is going to be a little hard. You can't pay your mortgage. You can't put food on the table. And now you have another conflict shock. Oh my gosh, not only did you lose your job, but now you find your spouse in bed with somebody else. Oh my gosh. So now you have another conflict shock, but it's not going to land in the same hemisphere as the first one. This is going to bounce to the opposite hemisphere. Once you have one in one side, one half of your brain, one hemisphere, that side is closed and the only side open is where it's going to go, and that's the opposite side. So now you're conflict active with the second conflict. And so your two hemispheres are vibrating out of sync from each other and out of sync from their normal natural rhythm. Whoa! So this gives you an instant change. The moment that that second conflict shock lands in the brain, you have an instant change in your body. You are instantly lash out at somebody. You're upset. You're instantly depressed. You're instantly manic and going crazy. You're instantly paranoid. You're instantly, you name it. There's a change in who you are at that moment and how you are showing up in the world generally. So that's what we call a constellation. There are two Hummer focus in the brain, and the two brain hemispheres are vibrating out of sync from each other and out of sync from their natural rhythm. So that's a basis right there. So Dr. Hummer
Right.
explored that. And again, looking at their brains, he realized there's about 20 different combinations of the right and the left hemisphere relays that are involved. So about 20 or so combinations of changes in behavior and mood. And then, of course, if you add on, you've got two of those going on, which means you have four conflict active relays in the brain. Now you have even more distinct changes in the behaviors and moods, and so on and so forth. So it's a fascinating look at what's happening biologically when you have an instant change. We all have these. We all have these. I mean, truly, unless you're an alpha, and that's like 1% of the population, I am certainly not one, and I don't really know of anyone who is. So I'm going to
Either.
say most people have these.
I think I have
And how
about
am I doing
six.
so?
I think about six, and I'm proud of them. I love them. Yeah.
Yeah. So then we look at, okay, we're looking at a Hummer focus in the right and in the left. And there are different areas in the brain. At this point, we really only know of constellations that have their two Hummer focus in the brain in the same area in the brain. So there's two in the brainstem, there's two in the cerebellum, there's two in the cerebral cortex, there's two in the cerebral medulla, all of that. So we don't know of any constellations succinctly here that would have one Hummer focus in the brainstem and one in the cerebral medulla. We just don't know that yet. I have no doubt it's going to be uncovered and discovered over time. What we have here are the basics. And when you look at the basics, what he would call the basics of what he discovered, it is phenomenal. It is a
Really
phenomenal amount of information. So even with the
amazing.
basics, we've got this.
My gosh, amazing. Yes. And a lot of these constellations are actually all of us have different degrees of constellations. And we have to understand that constellations are a survival response to a perceived distressful traumatic experience. Perhaps it doesn't even have to be as deep as losing your job or seeing your spouse with another person in bed. It can be other things as long as that psyche had perceived it as distressful. So it really is bio individual. It depends on the psyche perception of that person. And I feel that a lot of our constellations are our superpowers, our gifts, for
Yeah.
sensing extra sensory, perception and all of that.
And I love that. That's exactly it. So these constellations give us our gifts. They may give us our individuality, our personality, our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions, what we think and say and do all come from our constellations. So these are not bad or wrong. They are helping us and they've made us into the people that we are. Now, if we don't like who we are, we can take action here and make some changes. So we
I love
become the
that.
person we do like. And when we know ourselves biologically, it's much easier to do that. You have a roadmap now.
Yes, yes,
And
that's
that's
what I love
important.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of what I don't know. Was it Hippocrates who said that? Know thyself.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
I think it was Hippocrates. One of the greats for sure said that. And that's this gives us a level of knowledge we've never had before in the human race.
exactly.
And here we are.
Exactly, especially since it's being labeled as bad, negative. Whenever we say mental illness, we always say psych ward or something. But, I've had consultees with psychoses, which we know, beauty, thank you so much, GHK, that there's a 3-month window where there is like jitteriness and instability that happens, which is a survival response because the brain is trying to find solutions for that,
Yeah.
DHS. And then there's a period where it's temporary, it'll die down and it'll balance itself out.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's always a journey. And when you kind of have a better idea of where you are in that journey, when you know your constellations, you know your tracks and triggers that start them. And when you start to understand how to finish them or balance them so you're no longer experiencing a different kind of behavior or mood, then you're really in the driver's seat. And that's what I try to do with folks is when I meet with somebody, right, where I'm not only looking at what they're writing down on their health history form of, oh, I have eczema and I have constipation and things like that. I'm also reading between the lines and looking to see, well, what constellations do they have? And in conversation with them, it usually is pretty apparent. And
Yes.
so in a consult, that's what I'll do is we'll work on whatever physical stuff they want to work on. And then I'll also bring in the constellations. And some people know enough to realize, oh, I just want to know my constellations. And that's what we work on, which is super fascinating. So
Yeah.
I'll ask a series of questions and I can tell from their answers, where they lean in their constellations and on which side. So if you have a constellation, so we have a Hammer focus in the right and on the left hemispheres. Now, they're usually, if one of them is accentuated, then that's going to give you different kind of behavior. If it's accentuated on the left side, then you're going to be more outgoing and usually fairly upbeat and happy, which is wonderful until it's not. And then if it's more accentuated on the right side, you're more inward and passive, maybe a bit quieter. So that's one great way. And what I'm talking about here are the territorial constellations, the conflicts that are in the territory. There are 5 on each side of our brains in the temporal lobe. Now, again, we have them in the brainstem, the cerebellum, the cerebromedulla, and in the areas in the cerebral cortex that are not in the territories. We have those as well. And I'll cover those in a couple minutes. But the territorial ones are the ones that really give us our flavor of who we are. It's just fascinating. So knowing that I have been pretty outgoing and happy most of my life, I know I've been pretty manic most of my life. That
Right.
has also shifted my hormones. My estrogen has always been a little bit lower, apparently, although I never lost a period. And so, once you understand the territory, you understand how your hormones, your estrogen and your testosterone are balanced or not, which is
Yeah.
another whole level of this. We think of just mental illness, it's in our mind. It's not. It is in your
Right.
body and it is shifting your hormones.
Exactly. And the saying about losing your period, I did lose my period a few times in my 20s. And very clearly it was around a relationship,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
So
Yeah.
knowing that gives us a power that, oh gosh, I totally thought something was wrong with me or whatever. Now,
Right.
GHK gave me this, like, kind of elucidated that, well, your body was protecting you from, a relationship, a man that you don't trust.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Right, right,
Yeah.
exactly. That's absolutely perfect. So what I see is that when people take my Psychoses and Constellations course, I actually have a slide in there that says at the beginning, it's like, okay, you're about to do a deep dive into humanity and also yourself. And so people will go through it and say, oh my gosh, I have that constellation. Oh my gosh, I've got this one too. Oh, I've got this one too. And so everyone comes out with like, oh, I think I have all of these. And it's like, you don't. And there are key ones that you probably do have. And so once you understand those key ones, then it's like, okay, now you know what to do. So
Right.
let's say you mentioned earlier the degrees of it. It doesn't always have to
Right.
be huge, intense stuff. It can be smaller stuff. So let's take one territorial constellation and look at the behavior changes. If it's a very small conflict shock that occurred, and let's look at the what we'd call the autistic constellation. That is not autism. It is the autistic constellation. That's a combination of the scare fright conflict, which is in your left hemisphere, and the territorial anger conflict, which is in your right hemisphere. So a lighter one would mean that maybe in some situations you're a little shy. That's it. That's all that means. A more intense conflict active phase, a more intensity to those DHSs, those conflict shocks would be more like full blown, what we'd maybe call autism, that you live in your own world, you don't talk, you don't make eye contact. There's a lot of other programs going there too. But from one extreme to the other, it looks very, very different. And so understanding the nuances between them, between very light conflicts and constellations and heavy ones, can make a big difference. That's why I think when people go through the course, they're like, oh my gosh, I have this too, I have this too. It's like, no, you don't. You might have a very light one of this one and a slightly more intense one of this one, and that makes you think you have all the others, but you don't, if that makes
Right.
sense.
I love that. Amazing. And I hope people listening understand the autistic constellation, that when we know more or less how it triggers, we can, in a way, sort of protect from it, or at least be more conscious and aware of our
Right.
children, and look at the signs of danger, that the body language is I'm in fear, and the solution is keep them
Yes.
safe, and you could prevent, I mean, to a certain extent you
Yeah.
could,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
absolutely. I love it when parents learn Ganesha Kunde to begin with. And then when they learn constellations, it's a whole other ballgame because now they can see their kids in a whole different light. And
Yes.
if the children are young enough, then they can provide an environment where these children will solve their constellations and unconstellate. And so now they'll catch up with maturity. So what happens in the territory, just the five on the in the temporal lobe on the right and the left, is that when you constellate with that, you have an emotional maturity stop. An emotional maturity stop. Now, this doesn't mean you're stupid. It means you gain in intellect and skills, but you have an emotional age of that age. So if you constellate at age 5, then when you're 40 years old and you get angry, you kind of look like a 5-year-old. When you get angry, we're going to see vestiges of a 5-year-old there because emotionally there's still there's a lack of maturity there. And
Right.
again, when you know this and you look at your children's behavior and you realize, oh my gosh, my 5-year-old is acting like a 2-year-old, and you realize, oh yeah, they had a big conflict shock at age 2. Now you know your child has a constellation. And I will say the bioaggressive seems to be very common these days. I'm seeing that in a lot of parents who are coming to me with their kids. And so something happened that was scary and made them angry as well. Something going on in their territory that just wasn't right for them as a 2-year-old. They constellated. Their behavior's been upsetting and challenging ever since then. So when the parents discover that now with a 5-year-old, you can start to change their environment and relate to them differently. You've been through 3 years of dealing with somebody who's having, major temper tantrums, perhaps, or lashing out, and you're walking on eggshells around them. And it's hard to be a parent to somebody like that. So when you learn this, you learn to behave differently. And when you behave differently, you're creating a different environment for your children, which eventually can mean they can balance or resolve their constellations and no longer have that behavior anymore. When that happens, they will catch up from being a 2-year-old emotionally to being that 5-year-old or 6-year-old. And that won't take very long at that age.
Right. Yeah.
We
And would you say, Andy, that the earlier the better? The earlier that you catch it, the better, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so we have until the age of 25 to solve these. Until the age of 25, that's when we reach emotional maturity. At 25, then it's sealed. You can't gain an emotional maturity. You can gain skills, absolutely. You can gain communication skills, intimacy skills, all of that. But you still have the emotional maturity of that age you were at when you constellated. So that's why the earlier we can catch this, especially if you're still controlling their environment because they're home with you. Once they're in
Yes.
school, it's a little different. And once they're teenagers, it's different. And yet it is still being done. And I'm seeing that. So we've seen 17-year-olds resolve or at least balance out their constellations so they're no longer exhibiting their behaviors anymore,
Right.
which is
Amazing.
fascinating. And that's just by mom changing who she is and changing, therefore, it changes the household.
Yes. And this is Freya. This is Freya, guys.
Freya.
Last night we had
Yes.
a free info session on Freya.
Oh, good, good.
It remains to be the magic tool in the arsenal for family
Totally.
relationships and everything because it's so biological and it aligns with
Yes.
nature's laws and biological communication. And everybody needs to learn Freya.
Everybody does. Everybody does. We can't emphasize that enough, right, Ellie? It's like,
Yes, we can.
yeah, if you're a female, you're a woman, you need to know this because you're not going to learn it any other place. In fact, you're going to learn the opposite in your culture, wherever you are, you will learn the opposite. And that's why
Exactly.
it's so important for us to learn how to be female, how to be women, and how to communicate effectively from that perspective.
Exactly.
When we do it, it impacts our household, especially the men in our life, but also the girls in our life too, our daughters as well.
Right.
Our,
Yeah. And yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Andy.
say our parents, it changes our relationship with our parents. If you're an adult, you've got older parents, changes that too. Siblings, coworkers, bosses, all of that.
Yeah,
And
even
who doesn't
strangers.
want
Magic tool. It's like,
it?
whoa, I have this magic charm around me, and everybody wants to be around me and help me.
Yes, it's the closest we would have as women to having a magic wand is knowing
Exactly.
the Freya material.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's another, overarching reason why I'd also would like households to learn about Freya, because I feel that just that constellation that you mentioned, the bioaggressive constellation, is so common when a child has bioaggressive constellation and it doesn't get resolved, or there's no opportunity to resolve it because there's too much relapsing conflicts of abuse or something at home or neglect, and this boy becomes a teenager and still has a conflict. There's hormones and there's more aggression on top of the constellation. Then he could grow up to be like a dangerous, or like somebody with behavior that's really errant behavior, but could also turn out to be a more dangerous man when they get older. It's like fix
Right.
it at this
It,
as early as you can. Yeah.
early as possible because we want to have a society that is healthier and happier. And right now, I don't know about the Philippines, but here in the US, we are so incredibly constellated and divided. It is ridiculous that we still actually have a government and we still have a country because of that. Yeah, and that's constellated behavior. So I did some research once and for my constellations course, and I often teach this as well when I do a presentation about what happens when we don't live biologically and what does our society look like. And it's not very good. So we're looking at increased rates of suicide. That's
Right.
grown like 60% in the past 40 years. That's constellation related. We have more mental illness. We have more bipolar. We have more schizophrenia. We have more learning disabilities. We have more, controversially, we have more gay, lesbian, bisexual, transsexual people. All
Right.
of these are constellations. None of this is bad and wrong. It's all survival programs.
Right.
So
Right.
that's great that we have the mechanism inside us to survive, and the impact on society is pretty huge. And we're
Right.
creating a society where our sperm levels are very low and infertility rates are very high. Well, there's a reason for that. And
Right.
again, it comes back to our constellations. Allopathic medicine separates all this out. Oh, your hormones are so different from everything else. And it's like, oh, no, no, these are all connected to our
Yeah.
suicide rates, our LGBT, our happiness in
Yeah.
life, our fertility rates. It's all
Yeah.
connected. And
Absolutely.
when we know this, we understand how. And again, we have
Right.
a roadmap forward.
I love that. It's like Dr. Hammer provided us this manual, like operation manual for this very complicated Tesla machine or whatever, advanced test, where you only know to push two buttons, the on or off and the air conditioning, but there's like 250 other buttons that you don't
Yeah,
know about, right? And now,
right,
because you know all of them, you could control basically how it kind of runs in a way. We've just been
right.
given this power of knowledge and the ability to kind of control it to a certain extent. So that,
Right.
yeah, that's kind of what I love. What would you say would be the collective constellation of America as a nation? What constellation would you give it? Would it be, because I know what the
Well,
Philippines is.
oh, you do. That's interesting. I've never thought of that before. It's definitely territorial.
Do you think it's megalomanic? Would you feel that it could be
I would say there's a
goat like,
good amount of megalo in the
yeah,
Americans. Absolutely, that, yeah, yeah, we really are the
right?
best. And it's like, let's control the currency in the world, after World War II and so on and so forth. Yeah, that's a really good one. On top of megalo, it's going to be probably a bioaggressive as
Bioaggressive.
well, because it's like, oh, you're not going to do it our way. Well, we're going to bomb you,
Exactly.
fortunately, or
Ex
create a skirmish here to divert from attention over here.
right. Look at
Yes.
me, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yep, exactly. Oh man.
America.
What is it for the Philippines?
Philippines were more postmortal. We're more of the
Oh,
but more of the accentuation on the right side. So we're a little bit more depressive. We're a little bit more
yep,
within ourselves. Yeah, a
yep.
little bit. Yeah, because we've lost our territory because we were colonized for yeah by the Spaniards for 500
Right,
years, and then
right.
the Americans came, and so we didn't really we kind of lost ourselves in it, and we
Right.
became a little bit shy, you know,
Yeah,
a little bit more depressive. So that's us. Yeah,
right.
it feels
Oh man, that
feels
makes
like
total sense. That makes
yeah,
total sense. I can
yeah,
see
yeah.
that. Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm gonna say that for America right now, we've got so many territorial constellations going on and we're pinging back and forth so fast that we can't think straight. Nobody can think straight. Our brains are too skewed right now. If you pay
So
attention to all that stuff.
so always in psychosis, right? In the psychosis balcony, right? So Andy, would
Yeah,
you be able to differentiate because it's psychosis and constellations and
right.
why it's called that?
Right. So the constellations are, like I said, the combinations that are two, one on each side. Psychoses it's getting back to, so the right side is the inward side. And so if you have one conflict on the right hemisphere in the territorial, you're going to be more inward and it could be given a label of depression.
Right.
Right. And so if you have more accentuation on the left side, then it's going to be more manic, more outgoing. And so when we have both of those going on, we can ping back and forth between mania and depression, mania and depression. And so that looks pretty psychotic, if you will.
Right.
But it's also the psychoses is it's so in depth as far as looking at accentuation, but also looking at our hormone changes and also the sequencing of what happens first, what happens second. And that kind of also displays our behavior and how, again, it changes our hormones and all that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And
Um,
yeah, I love what I love about what one of our mentors said about psychosis is that there's kind of a balcony of, I guess, 3 months, 12 weeks or something like that, where you could kind of predict when it happens. There's like a 3 months, like this person's going nuts, pretty much,
yeah.
or buck wild or something. And it's like just sit and observe and witness the psychotic
Right.
behavior and then just wait for the 12th week because then it'll balance out. But sadly, during that balcony, that's when people medicate because there's too much crazy behavior that, oh, let's
Mm,
medicate. But then the medication kind of dampens or it gets in the way of the natural balancing out of the psychosis. So
right.
that's the sad part. So if you could
Right.
just wait for that 12 weeks to happen and then it'll
Right.
balance
And it
out.
doesn't always take 12 weeks. If it's a
Right.
smaller constellation, it might only be 3 or 4 weeks, and you start to
Right.
feel better. You start to have more balance in your brain hemispheres, and you start to feel more balanced in your behavior. So that's
Right.
important, but it is important to understand what happened and how can you find a solution to that? How can you balance this out or solve it? Find the real life solution, absolutely. So can I share an exercise that I do with folks?
Please. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I do two psychoses classes every month. And so I try to pick somebody who's there in the class. It's like, all right, let's work on yours. And it's, hopefully, I'm teaching part of the class anyway. And then it's like, okay, who has one of these constellations that we've just covered? Who has one of these and you want to work on it? So we'll work on it. So what I'll have them do is let's say it's bioaggressive, since we've mentioned that a few times. That's a combination of an identity conflict. Who am I? Where's my place? Where do I belong? Do people see me the way I want them to see me? And that's a female conflict that's on the left side. So if you have that accentuated, you're going to be more outgoing and happy. But it also means you might be more aggressive to folks or just upset about your identity. What do you mean I can't do this? Where do I belong? And then,
Yeah.
of course, the opposite side is on the opposite hemisphere is territorial anger. So identity, who am I, where's my place, and territorial anger. Something's happening in my territory and I'm not comfortable with this. It makes me angry. So that's a potent combination. If you are more accentuated on the left side, you're going to be lashing out. That's a bioaggressive child or somebody with anger management issues. If it's more accentuated on the right side, it's going to be a little bit more passive in that it's more sarcastic or biting or passive aggressive or more inward.
Self-harming.
Right.
Right.
So they look very different depending on which one's accentuated. So let's say we've got somebody who's got this going on and occasionally they fly off the handle. And that's the extent of it, right? They're not harming themselves, they're not, killing people and things like that. It's just that they fly off the handle more than they want to, and they're not happy with themselves when they do that. So we'll take a look at, okay, well, what's going on in your life? We know it's identity and we know it's territorial anger. So when's the last time you constellated? When did you fly off the handle? Oh, it was 2 days ago. Okay, well, what happened 2 days ago? Let's say you just cleaned the kitchen floor and your kids came through with muddy boots. Literally, it's that. And you flew off the handle, you screamed at them, and sent them outside. Now you made them clean the floor. It's like, okay, let's go back to there's our scenario, which is like such a mundane, yes, so the floor is a little dirty. And
Yeah.
yet you responded in a way that's way over the top because you constellated in that moment. So in that moment, you didn't know who you were, and there's something that happened in your territory that made you angry. So we look at that and then we start what I call pulling it apart. And we'll take one side of that. So I'll say, okay, let's look at the identity side. So what was unsettling about that? Who were you in that you had to blow up at your kids because they made the kitchen floor dirty? It's like, well, I'm not a very good mother if my house is dirty. Okay, well, let's go with that. So what happens next? Now I go into kind of a metaphoric space with them that's pretend, that's like, okay, so now you're judged at being a bad mother. What happens next? When someone's judged as being a bad mother, what happens next? Well, nobody's going to want to be my friend and no kids are going to want to play with my kids. Okay. So when nobody wants to be your friend and no one wants to play with your kids, what happens next? Metaphorically. And we go to the next step. Well, then nobody's going to like us. We're going to be all by ourselves. Okay. So what happens if you're all by yourselves? Well, then we're going to be miserable. Okay. What happens if you're miserable? Well, I don't know. We're just gonna be all by ourselves and unhappy. Okay. And I push them. I keep going. Well, what happens? You're all by yourselves and you're unhappy. What happens next? Well, we're isolated. Nobody likes us. We're just gonna shrivel up and die. And it's like, yeah, exactly. So the root of this, of her lashing out at the kids, is that if my kitchen floor isn't clean, then we will die. The root of this is that they
Right.
will die because that's where the psyche, brain, organ intelligence took her in that moment.
Right. Wow. Amazing.
And then we'll do that on the opposite side as well, the territorial anger. And we'll do that. So now we've got it down to the most common denominator, and it's always I'm going to die. And so
It's
when you read
survival. Yeah.
it's survival. So the reason you lashed out at your kids because they brought their muddy boots in was because if they did that, you're not going to survive. And your body is hardwired for survival. So it's going to create a behavior so that you get done what needs to get done so you will survive. When we know this, we can then say, thank you, psyche, brain, organ, for keeping me safe. And I just cleaned the floor. The kids just came in and made it muddy. And I feel you can feel yourself. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. Thank you, Psyche, for keeping me safe. I just constellated and I know it's about survival and that I'm going to do a reality check right now. And I have people literally, what do you see? Is anybody holding a gun to your head? No. Okay, what do you see? Well, give me a reality check of your reality in this moment. Okay, the sky is blue. The sun is shining. I'm wearing a white shirt. And I just bring them back to reality that are you in a life or death situation like your subconscious thinks you are? No. Okay, now you can separate from it.
Wow.
And they do, and then they don't constellate again.
Gosh, it's so logical. It's common
It
sense.
is.
It's biological.
It is it is biological, totally. So
Amazing.
when we can pull it apart, and it's often very visceral when they get to that point where they're like, well, if this is my life, then I'm just gonna die. It's sometimes it's really hard for people to get there, and they don't understand what I'm doing, and and because they don't know how to think this way. So I have to really get them to think this way. We're thinking biologically here, right? Which is
Exactly.
what we haven't been raised to think biologically. So we have to think, well, if that happens, then what happens next? Well, and if that happens, what
Right.
happens next? And it always gets down to that, I'm gonna be dead. So
Gosh,
it's incredibly empowering when people go through this. And even when they know this exercise, they know that's coming. I don't let them go there right away. With that first one, okay, so you're angry. By identity, who are you when your kids make your clean floor dirty? And if they immediately say, well, I know I'm gonna die, it's like, no, 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 no. We have to take the journey. They they have to get into themselves to see
right.
what's next. Because it's different for everybody.
It is, yeah.
And then once they give that answer, then I need to take them to the next answer. And they
Right.
have to take that journey to get to that point of it's survival. I'm going to die. So, yeah.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh,
And,
that's so
and that
powerful. And
connects through all the layers of us, our psyche and our brain and our organ intelligence. It takes us through that whole
the
nebula,
relay.
the
Yes.
layers of all that. Yeah.
It's amazing. Andy,
Yeah.
what do you think about like, we have bioswitch, right?
Yes.
Because that example that you gave me reminds me of the interview I had on a podcast of the maker of my neurofeedback machine. And he's one of
Uh,
the pioneers of neurofeedback, and they're
yeah.
all about neuroplasticity. And he gave exactly that example where there's a mother, and she just cleaned everything, and then the kids came in with muddy shoes and everything. And he switched it, and he said, well, at least there are shoes at home, because in 5 years there will be no shoes coming into your home because they're away for college, and you'll
Right.
be all alone. And
Right.
just even that, I feel like it's such a powerful switch. Like, it
Yeah.
moves us out of the amygdala, like the primal,
Right.
like the reptilian brain, and up
Mhm.
into the higher brain.
Right.
Yeah, what do you think
Right.
about that too?
Yeah, absolutely. Any way that you can get out of that incredibly reactive moment, when you can
Right.
bring consciousness to that and pull it apart any way you need to, get real, think about what happens if the kids are gone, they're grown up, then I don't have this anymore. Yeah, any way that you can get to a point of rational thinking that gets you out of the constellation. You have now balanced the constellation more.
Thank you. That's what I love about you, because you're very open about, and open about,
There's
yeah,
no one right way to do this, and you'll see folks that are intuitive and they are in touch with things like the person you just mentioned. And they're
yeah,
seeing this too from a slightly different perspective, but they're coming to the same conclusion we are.
right. Just
Did
got there
that
in, like, faster step, one step.
right, right, exactly. Exactly. So that you're going to see this everywhere. Hopefully, with people who are doing this incredibly deep work, real
Yeah.
work that does match with GHK, because if it's matching with GHK, it's matching with biology. And
Yeah.
so, therefore, it's going to be accurate. We can use that type of information.
Yeah. You know
Yeah.
what? I love that so much. And I hope people are really taking this in, and knowing that they have the power to, kind of control their biology to a certain extent.
Yeah,
One of the
more
things I
more so
love,
than you realize.
so than you realize.
So
Yeah.
than you realize. Yes, you're in much more of the driver's seat than you realize once you understand this. Once you
Exactly.
understand the five biological laws. And the next level is once you understand psychoses.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
what I like to talk about constellation psychosis is, often I like to say that everybody with an Oscar award, everyone with a Nobel Peace Prize, everybody with whatever a series of novels and whatever, these are all constellated individuals, right?
They give us our gifts. Absolutely. These are not bad or wrong. And I can't emphasize that enough. They give you your unique perspective in the world, your unique personality. There's nothing wrong or bad here. It's a matter of
Yes.
understanding yourself and realizing, oh, if there's parts of yourself that you're not comfortable with or that other people, are you're sensing this isn't the way I want to be with other people, then you can figure this out.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is,
exactly.
I always say, it does put you in the driver's seat, and it really does. It's changed my
Mhm.
life so, 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 so much, and I'm sure yours as well, knowing this
Me too.
information.
Yeah. And so, like, one of my favorite, I don't know if I have it, but it's the mythomatic constellation. So the
Yep.
prolific writers and the people with a gift of gab, politicians, journalists, and or George R. R. Martin, and just writing, writing, writing. These are This is mythomatic, right? And sometimes I feel like, turn me on, because I have a lot of content to put out. Go, come on, let's turn it on now. How do we turn it on? Because it's like when it's on, sometimes when I read some of my stuff, like even on Facebook, I'm like, oh, I was mythomatic. What happened to me? Because it's like verbose and
Yeah,
all. It's like, woo.
I know when you know your manic tracks and can step on them to create the behavior you need to get what you need done, it's like that's true empowerment,
Isn't it? Isn't it?
isn't it?
It's like,
Yeah.
woo, I just need it now for like a day and then I'll turn it off.
Right, right. I used to, if I wanted to make myself manic, I
Okay.
would think about, because I do my taxes when I used to do taxes. I used to do my federal taxes every year. And
Okay.
and I've done that since I was about 18. So if I wanted to make myself manic, I would get into my software, my tax software, and start filling things in. And instantly I'm manic. It's like, okay, perfect. I'm all set. I can now get done what I need to get done. Just thinking about doing my taxes.
It's such a superpower,
It is. It is.
boost of energy. You become manic and you get
Yeah.
everything done.
So manic, so focused. Yeah.
So focused. It's such a gift. That's why I love Constellation so much.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome.
And then what about the personas without mentioning any names, like, constellated, whatever personas who are very popular right now in the US?
Oh
What
God.
constellations would that be? I think you know who we're talking about.
Without mentioning names, let's just say
Yeah.
somebody who's extremely megalo. Extremely
Narcissist
megalo.
megalo.
Yeah, really megalo. So when you're megalomanic, it means you have two self-devaluation conflicts. That means
There you
you've had
go.
incidences happen to you where you feel like you're 2 inches tall. You feel like you're worthless and nothing. And so
Right.
the super sense of this is that you're now going to boost yourself up and just brag and just talk about all your accomplishments and probably embellish them a bit, especially if you're a bit mytho, which I'm going to say this often goes together. And so now
Yes,
you're embellishing all that you're able to do. And remember too that mythos are very good at lying.
exactly.
They're telling such a story and they're embellishing it so much. They're just, we could call it a white lie. If it's like, oh, yeah, you look really nice in that dress when you really look, oh, it's like, I don't like that dress on that person at all. But when we're talking at the scale we're talking about, we're taking somebody who's perhaps megalo and boosting of all the wonderful things that they do. And now we're going to put a twist on it that's just absolutely not accurate at all because it's a mytho twist and it's inaccuracies that are blown out of proportion. So it's like, yeah, okay, I can see that in people in the world today who are prominent.
Yes. Likely with the maturity stuff, you think, Andy, this
A
person,
very, very young
right?
mature stuff. Yes, under
Likely.
age 10.
Right. Very much the behavior of this person is, yeah.
Right, exactly. And let's add in a little postmortal there and a little Casanova as well. When
Oh,
somebody's had a lot of relationships or when they're having a lot of affairs, then yeah, they're gonna be they've got a postmortal slash Casanova constellation going on as well. And that's
so,
gonna be a combination of, well, for a male, it's going to be two territorial losses. Like
right.
let's say, your business tanks and now you're bankrupt, but you're gonna pretend you're not.
Right.
And that happens
Exactly.
over and over again.
Right. And a lot of people in Hollywood are that way. You know how
Yeah,
they just change, spouses, like they change clothes, and
right. But you
they go
realize too that in order to be in Hollywood, you've got to be pretty constellated.
exactly.
That is
Because the
logical living.
rejection,
Folks that are the entertainers, they're the Casanovas. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
the
And
clowns and
yeah, the ones who are just, they have to have the limelight on them.
Yeah. So, Andy, would it be fair to say that if we controlled constellations, like let's say we just found a way to control them, it would be a boring world?
It would be a world where we are all focused on our very close community, our family, close knit community, and we are working together, working side by side with other people for common goals on a
Yeah.
regular basis. Yeah, it would be not nearly, let's put it this way, our newspaper headlines would not look like they do now.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The news, what we call the news, would no longer exist
Right.
the way it does now. Not at all.
Right. Exactly. So, the news, social media, AI, all of these things, would you say that they contributed to the rising cases in constellations like bipolar, suicide rates, LGBTQ, does social media, do you think, and the internet have something to do with why it's accelerated?
100%.
Yeah,
Absolutely. If we did not have social media, we would not have the issues that we have now.
agree.
They are number one instigator here. And the
Yeah,
rise of all the social media stuff, of all the news outlets, and it creates the division. We know it creates division. And when you've got
yeah.
division, you've got polarization, and now you've got territorial constellations. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what do you
Yeah.
think about, because our government, I think, will be banning social media for teens, like for 13 and under. Do you think that's a good thing, or is that going to cause more, stuff just because?
I think for the current generation, then it's going to be pretty upsetting because they'll feel
Yeah,
like cut off from things. But the younger kids coming up, see, we always want instant gratification and
exactly.
changes. And it's like,
That's
when I think of changes, I always think in the terms of generations.
right.
So, we're starting to raise kids now who know this. And so we're looking at 2 to 3 generations before there's
Right.
real change. And
Yes.
and I always say it's not going to happen in my lifetime. And people always come back. It's like, of course it's going to happen in your lifetime. It's like, people, get real. That's not how it happens.
Yes, agree. I
You
see
have to
that
look at the
completely.
past 100 years. In the past 100 years, we've gone from living biologically to not living biologically. That's a couple of generations. It's going to take several more generations to get back to it. That's if we're all on the same page. We're not yet. It's going to take
Yes.
a few generations to get on the same page, and then a few more generations to really impact civilization as we know it.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're in it for the long haul, you guys.
Yes, we are. Plant the
It has
seed.
exactly. It has to start somewhere, and it's starting here with us and others who are like us, who are doing the
Yeah.
same thing. We've got families in this country who are homesteading. They're off the grid, or they're homeschooling, and they're having large amounts of children and raising their children to be loving and caring and manly and feminine and self-sufficient. And so we have that happening. It's a very small percent. And at some
Yes.
point, we'll have a heck of a lot more than that. But
Yeah,
it's
I
there,
think
it's
so.
inherent in us.
It
So
is. It is. When we
yeah,
align, it's magic. It's
it
practical
is.
magic. And I mean, it's been there all along, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
I would put it one level. I have a mother who did Freya, who's into GHK. She did a little bit of Shinpo and everything, and she's in corporate. And she just recently had just gave birth to a baby and everything, but she's biological completely. She brings the kids to the office with her, and then she educates the women around her that my children need to be with me. And so she's trying to infuse all of this, so she could be the harbinger of change
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
corporate world, in that
Right.
corporation, and start a
Right.
trend.
Right, exactly. And I love that because we need women saying, yeah, I'm going to do it this way, and yeah, I'm still going to do this job, but I'm doing it this way. And that's
Exactly.
what we need. So that's one good thing that came out of the pandemic for our country is that a lot of people started staying home and they were
Right.
with their kids. And it turns out they were like, "Oh, I love this. This is great." And it gave them a taste of a different kind of life. And
Right.
when you get a taste of a different life, it changes your perspective. And that's what we're talking about with Ganesha Hailakunde. Change your perspective, and your world changes. Your
Exactly.
behavior changes. Your health changes.
Uh,
Well,
e- Everyone around you changes too.
exactly, exactly. So this is good. We
It's
just have to
good.
get past the current chaos that we see that's all the buzz. It's all pretend.
It is.
Yeah, it's all hyped up stuff. And if we can
Yeah.
get back to, we are all people. So here's a little just example is that I live in Western North Carolina, and last September we had a horrific hurricane and flooding. I've never lived through anything like that before, and we were shut down. We had people died, and we would see houses, going down the road in the rivers that were now in our roads, and it was a horrific, horrific time. All communication was shut off. People outside knew what was going on. We did not. All we knew was our immediate neighborhood. We had no communication with the outside world. We had no social media. We had no cell phones. And we had a blackout week for at least, it was about 3 weeks before we had internet back, but we had no cell phones. And so that week was magical for us. It was
Wow.
magical. So when the flood, I've got a road right outside here, and when you could walk on it, the flood happened and it was several feet high, going at a very fast current that if I'd walked in it, I would have been swept away. And that's just 30 feet from my front door, from where I'm standing right here. And so by 2 o'clock that afternoon, that was happening all night, all morning. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it had subsided. And now I could see patches of road. And by 3 o'clock, I saw people walking down this street who you don't walk down this street. It's a busier street. There's no sidewalks. We had whole
Mhm.
families walking down the street. And I had been all by myself all morning in this
Oh,
horrific experience, wondering, am I going to die? Is this
right.
going to, take my house away, take my car away, take my dog, who's only 20 pounds? And
Oh,
so I saw families walking down and I rushed out. I have no idea who these people are. And they live just up the street from me. And we greeted each other. How are you? Are you okay? Yes. And we engaged with people around us we had never engaged with. We have different socioeconomic places around here. And so, there's a hierarchy, right, that exists. When you take all that away, we're all just people.
yeah. Oh my gosh.
And that day, I will never forget that day when we were just all out in the streets. Are you okay? We were just caring for each other.
Oh, I love that so much.
It was such a gift from this
Yeah.
horrific time. And it's horrible that that you have to have catastrophe to
Right.
bring this type of gift. We need to make it so we don't have catastrophe.
Right. That social connection is really, gosh, it's what helps us survive. We evolved with this social connection,
Right.
social engagement.
And these people walking down the street, it didn't matter if they were Republican or Democrat. It didn't matter. We were people.
Right.
We survived. We
That's
lived through this. That's what mattered.
what matters. I love that, Andy. Wow. So powerful. Oh my gosh. I can
Yeah.
feel the heart space just explode with that
Yeah. It,
story.
it was an amazing experience to go into that horrific place, not knowing if you're going to die, if you're going to lose everything you have. And then
Yeah.
to have that strong connection with people you don't know, but it didn't matter because what you knew is you all survived.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
And that is,
the week afterwards, where people were still, because we couldn't always drive on the road because the roads were out. So we were
Mhm.
all walking, and we live close enough to town so we could all walk to town. So people would walk to town. There'd be at the town green downtown, which is right at our fire department and our police department and our town square. We would go every day and listen to, okay, what's being done? And the fire trucks are getting out, the rescue trucks. We were isolated from the entire world. People could not get in, people could not leave. So it was an
wow.
amazing experience, and to be able to walk downtown and at least get an update and be around with, here's water. You need water? Here's some water. Thank you so much. Here's water, and we were feeding each other. We were all like, okay, we don't have refrigeration. Let's all start cooking. And we all had cookouts and we all got together and ate together. It's like this is a gift. This is what we don't have in at
Exactly.
least in our society in the US here. We don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
Not in
Yeah.
any way that we need to have it. And so that's why getting back to living biologically, which is what that was for that week, it
Right.
was golden.
And it had to take an upheaval for that to come out. And sometimes
Right.
that's what the universe sends our way to remind us that what matters the most. I mean, that's
Exactly.
beautiful. Compassion. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the human spirit, the indomitable human spirit, and the
Yes.
compassion, and
Yes.
the togetherness is what matters the
Is
most.
what matters, right? So it's really
Yeah.
about taking stock of your life, looking at all that's being told to us that really is not true. It's all
Right.
constellated stuff. It's all
Exactly.
constellated.
Yeah.
Get So for anyone watching this, get back to who you are. Know
Right.
yourself, know Ganesha Harlequin, know your constellations, and live as biologically as you can, knowing that all that chatter is just chatter you don't really need to pay attention to. Feeds the chaos and the constellations.
It's like the best example ever. You're in the middle of a disaster, isolated, and your smile is bigger than ever. I mean, that
Yes,
soundtrack is happy, beautiful, triumphant, victorious, instead of woe is
exactly.
me, I'm scared, I'm isolated, I'm in,
Exactly.
I'm gonna die. That's a
Exactly.
choice. That is a choice. And you made that choice. And knowing GHK, you were totally aware,
Yeah.
self-aware.
And I'll say going through that morning of the flood, knowing GHK was a lifesaver for me. So if
Yeah.
anybody needs a reason to learn this, it's
Right.
know that you never know when you're going to be in a natural disaster, right?
Yes.
You just don't know that. And so knowing GHK, I was able to make choices that morning that
Yeah.
were the right ones for me because I understand this. So I
Right.
knew I was isolated. And so there starts the KCT, the Kidney Collecting Tubule Program. So
Right.
I've got 4 houses across from me. One of them, 3 of them had vacated. They went to higher ground, and one of them was still here. She's another single woman. We were in
Okay.
touch with each other all morning. So we broke our isolation together. So I did
That's
that deliberately because I know GHK.
fabulous.
And so I went through my morning. That's okay. What is the potential for this? The potential for this is that my car could be swept away. My house could be swept away. Okay, what's my escape plan? I'm just thinking logically here that if I'm
Right.
going to have territorial losses and things, then how can I make it maximize my survival? And so, I'm just trying to think biologically.
Yeah.
And that's
High pressure because of the renal, right? Is it the renal parenchyma for is it the liquid conflict?
liquid, yeah, fluid conflict, right?
Fluid
And I
conflict.
never started that. So I looked
Yeah.
at this and I did look at the water coming by because there's a little lake right up the street here, a couple of miles up with a dam. And I
Right.
could tell that that dam was probably breaching.
Right.
I'd get surges down the street here. And I knew that if that dam really breached, if it just broke,
Yeah.
that it would probably take my car and my house. So I
Yeah.
just stayed very present. I stayed very,
Right.
very present. I'm not spinning out of control. I
Yes.
didn't go into frontal lobe, frontal.
Uh-huh.
I didn't. It's like, okay, what's reality? Reality is like, okay, it's about 2 feet high right now. Let's just monitor this. I had
Wow.
my escape route planned out because I've got a hill right behind me, so my dog and I could walk up to that,
Right.
scramble up the hill. And so I was just watching and just staying very present. Okay, just the water just crept up my driveway 6 feet in about 20 minutes. And it got to my car. I moved my car back, got to my car again. I'm staying present. It's like, okay, well, if my car goes, then I'm gonna, I just had it all planned out. And so I
Right.
was just calm and planning and just staying very present and watching. I was observing more than anything.
Good.
Just kind of hyper vigilant about, okay, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I seeing? And I'm just staying very, very present. I'm not
Yeah.
spinning out of control. I'm just staying as present as I could. And that really was helpful. And having
And
my neighbor to talk with.
love it. This
And
right
so
here. This is the
right, just
superpower.
right here. Just stay present. Stay
Right.
present. When you constellate, your kids come in and with their muddy boots, you're not present anymore. You're gone.
Right.
You've constellated. Staying present is a gift. That's a skill that you can learn.
And because GHK and the four criteria that makes up of conflict shock, acute, unexpected, isolated, caught off guard, you having a plan takes away a little bit of the acute and
Right.
unexpected because if it happens, I
Exactly.
have this plan, I have this plan. And then
Exactly.
isolated is you meeting up with your neighbor, and caught
Yep.
off guard is you meeting up with your neighbor and having the plan. So
Right.
there you go.
Exactly.
You just
So yeah, you
prevented
just
a biological conflict.
use this stuff, you use it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, such a superpower, Andy. I love
It's
this. This is such a great, great, great lesson. Yeah.
yeah. I
Amazing.
know. Well, we owe it all to Dr. Hammer here, right?
Yes,
It's like this
Dr.
is
Hammer.
thank you, Dr. Hammer, for
Thank
all that he
you
gave us
to
because
humanity.
yeah, it is a huge gift.
Yes,
So,
and Dirk. Thank you, Dirk.
and the sacrifice there of Dirk. Yes,
Yes, who appeared in his dreams and told him about the laws of nature. Yeah, thank you.
exactly.
Andi, oh my gosh, you are such a treasure always. I'm so happy, very grateful for your existence and for the service that you do for humanity and everything you do to educate all of us in GHK.
Well, you're
Thank
so
you.
welcome, Ellie, and I am so thrilled with what you are doing in the Philippines, in your corner of the world as well,
Thank
because it's
you.
so vital. We have people like you who learn this and it's like, oh, I need to teach this forward. And it's like, that's what we
Yeah.
need, all of us,
Yeah.
whoever's called to at least to do this. So thank you
Thank
for the role that you're playing and all that you're doing in the world. So, so,
You're
so
welcome.
important. And it's great we
You're
get to play together too.
I know, I love it. Oh my God, I just love learning from you. So, Andi is one of the most talented GHK educators, and the reason for this live is for you to be able to have access to Andi's courses and the Psychosis and Constellations course. Andi is the bomb. I mean, she teaches it in a way where you really understand to be fascinated with it,
Yeah,
So just like we
right.
talked about today. So Andi, let us know what courses you have in store, what bi-weekly
Yeah.
classes, monthly classes, and everything that you can
Yeah,
offer.
absolutely. So I've got my foundational course Beyond Holistic Medicine, and I do, and it's only like 5.5 hours of videos, but I do 6 hours of live interaction with my students every month because
Yes.
you can't learn this from a video, a podcast, a book. You can't. You have to have live interaction. So I do that 6 hours every month with my students, Beyond Holistic Medicine. The next course is Advanced Beyond Holistic, and that's just taking more advanced concepts, and then Psychoses and Constellations. And for all of these, I do live teleconferences, and I do try to accommodate your time zone and European
Yes.
time zone, which is not always easy. For Beyond Holistic, it would be your 6:30 in your morning, which is
Right.
the most doable I can do it for that class. And
Yeah.
then Psychoses is more like 4 o'clock, which is probably still a bit too early for you guys. So I need to look at that. If I have
Yeah.
enough Filipinos, I will change that time so that
Right.
you can. I vacillate them. I do one for European time, one for your time zone. So I'm more than willing to change that if need be.
Nice.
Yeah. And then I've got GHK for professionals to help people who want to use this in consultations with people.
That's
Um,
right. That's where I started. And I have all of Andy's classes, all of
yeah.
she mentioned. I'm, yeah, enrolled in all of them.
It gives you
I'm
at least a
happy.
foundation, and then, where you go from there is totally up to you. The sky's the limit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Andy, for teaching us tonight again. And we'll see you again. Maybe, have an update podcast. It's always such a pleasure to, have you rain your wisdom on us as
You
usual
are
and all of the
so
beautiful.
welcome. Absolutely would love to come and play again. I also want to mention another class that I do that's for anyone in the
Okay,
world, and it's an
sure.
individual class called Applied GHK. Because the question I always get, well, all right, so this is great information, but how do I do this? How do I
Right.
use it? Right? So I try to break it down, and that the content of that, what I cover, and I do this class every 3 weeks. It is at my noontime, so it's your midnight, and I'm more than willing to make some changes there, but you can get the replay. And the content's different every single time, but it's
Right.
always about how do I use this? So I
Yeah.
just want to put that out there. The replays are available.
Right. That's what I love. Also, you could just buy the class, and if you can't make it, you have the replay, and then you can just
Yeah,
make comments if you have questions. And Andy
right.
has groups on Telegram where she's
Yeah,
very active. She's actually really the one answering, and she
yeah,
answers with so much heart. That's what I love about Andy. If there's anything about the world, there's a lot of territoriality in the GHK arena. Andy's not there. Andy's not one of them. Andy is big heart, open space. Everybody work together and love each other.
yeah.
That's what I love about
Absolutely.
Andy. Yeah,
That's the biological way. So
it is. Yeah,
how I live, that's what I promote.
right. Thank you. Thanks so much, Andy.
You're so welcome, Ellie. Thank you so much. And just a great big hug to you and to
Big, big hug.
everyone who's in your classes and courses and anybody listening to this. So thank you so much for being
Yes.
here and having me speak today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye, Andy.
All right, take care. Bye bye.